Let's talk Trump. He's set to surrender himself tomorrow when he will finally learn the details of the charges against him. Now, one big piece of news coming out is that the judge might be slapping a gag order on him, which would prevent Trump from talking. Talking about what? Good question. Here to give us some insight into what could happen and how Trump is faring with all of this is Roger Stone. Roger Stone is a longtime political consultant known for his work with Nixon, Reagan, and later Donald Trump. He was investigated by Mueller, was subsequently indicted, convicted, and later pardoned for witness tampering and obstruction. He's written best-selling books, was a subject of a Netflix documentary, and now hosts The Stone Zone on Rumble each day. Roger Stone, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Kim, thank you very much for having me.
So you recently sent this, I don't know what you guys call it on Truth Social. It's not a tweet, it's a post. What is it called?
A truth. We truthed.
A truth. Okay, so you put this out there saying any attempt to gag real Donald Trump regarding this bogus case in New York would be unconstitutional and constitute election interference. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of what a potential gag order would look like, what it would entail? I know you had one against you at one point when you were going through some legal woes. So what would he be allowed? What would he be told not to say?
Well, we don't really know, of course, until we see it. But many sources tell me that the judge in this travesty of justice, in this incredible witch hunt in New York, are planning to issue a gag order on the president. Now, we don't know how broad that would be, but specifically, normally, he would not be able to discuss anything regarding this case, including the motives of the prosecution, the background of the prosecutor, the funding of the prosecutor. He would not be able to mention the judge, anything pertaining to the bias of the judge. Presumably, his lawyers are going to move to dismiss. They're going to move to recuse the prosecutor. They're going to move, my guess would be, to recuse the judge. They may move for a different venue rather than Manhattan, very liberal Manhattan. He wouldn't be able to discuss or explain why his legal team was doing any of those things if he was gagged. And of course, he certainly could not mention the case in connection with his presidential campaign or the fundraising thereof. Since the indictment itself is politically motivated, just those narrow limitations at a time when he is a legal candidate for federal office, I think they're not only both a violation of his free speech rights, but I also think it's very clear election interference. I think the Democrats at this point, noticing his giant bounce in the polls, noticing the $7 million he's now raised since he was illicitly charged, are looking for a silver lining. And perhaps they think if they can gag him, it will stop his forward momentum.
You would think they would have known that this would have given him a big, huge boost. I mean, now what we're seeing in the polls is at one point he was maybe edging out Ron DeSantis by 6, 7, 8%, but now it's like 25, 26, 27% that he's edging out Ron DeSantis. Do you think that they would have known this before going forward with this sort of, which obviously I think looks like a political persecution? Whether or not he's guilty, that's one thing. But look, I think from my viewpoint, a lot of them in Washington are guilty. They probably should go after every last one of them, not just Donald Trump, if this is truly not political. But because they're only going after him, it looks pretty political, I think, to all of us. Any of us being honest about it anyways, for sure. But how is the campaign feeling about all of this? I mean, they're seeing a huge boost. So they must be sort of thrilled, I guess, in a way that this is happening in kind of a sick, twisted way.
The problem, of course, is what we don't understand, of course, are the motives of the Democrats. This is taking what at worst, if he were guilty, and he doesn't concede that, would be a business records violation, a misdemeanor, and trying to whip it up to the level of a felony, using at least one witness who has a long record of non-reliability, and who said the exact opposite of what he is saying publicly in this case under oath in previous cases, including a defamation case and in several declarations to the Federal Election Commission. I speak, of course, of former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen. So we don't really know what their political motive is here. Remember, Jimmy Carter wanted to run against Ronald Reagan. He thought he would be the easiest candidate to beat. Hillary Clinton wanted to run against Donald Trump. She thought that he would be the easiest candidate to beat. So perhaps in their misguided political judgment, the Democrats actually want to run against Donald Trump, and therefore they recognize the enormous boost they're giving him. Or potentially, they are so blinded by their hatred of him, they don't realize that anything that does not kill him just makes him stronger. It's very tough to
Yeah.
know exactly what their motives are.
It's definitely one of the two, and I'm with you on that. I was saying the minute that this came out last week, I was thinking, do you think they did this because they're more afraid of Ron DeSantis and running Ron DeSantis against Biden than running Trump? And that would be a very misguided thinking, but a lot of their thinking, I think, has lately been very misguided. But so it's either that I agree with you, or it is that they're just the hatred. I mean, they've been going after this guy now for how many years? How many years have we been at this? And they finally got something, but we don't even really know what it is yet that they got. Do you have any insight into what it is that he's being charged with?
That's the great irony here. You and I are sitting here talking about an indictment that neither one of us has been able to read. We're reacting to a story leaked to the New York Times. CNN says that there are 34 or 32 individual counts. How could they know that but for an illegal leak from either the grand jury or from Mr. Bragg's office? It's unbelievable that we're sitting here talking about and speculating about the charges, never mind gag order, which of course no one has seen that either. It seems to me that they are making a strategic mistake. You have a special counsel still moving very aggressively today, announcing that he'd subpoenaed certain Secret Service agents to the grand jury regarding the actions of January 6th. I think you can look for a broader gag order if charges are brought there. But this effort in New York, very much like the effort in Fulton, Georgia, where if anyone will bother to read the entire transcript of the call between Donald Trump and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, in which there's, by the way, 6 other lawyers on the line listening and speaking, you would understand that Trump did not specifically tell him to find 11,870 votes or whatever it was. That is completely out of context. What Trump was saying was more than 11,800 some odd illegal votes have already been counted and can be identified, and that is the difference. Therefore, I actually won the state, something very different. But you wouldn't know that, of course, by reading the mainstream media. I still think that you have the very real possibility of federal charges regarding January 6th. I think they would be illegitimate. I think they would be fabricated, or charges in connection with his handling of documents. But that is because the left is so driven, perhaps by his full scale declaration of war against the deep state. He's openly said that if he is returned to the White House, he will completely reorganize and take power away from the national security apparatus, the intelligence agencies, those in our military who are seem to be obsessed with pursuing the agenda of the New World Order.
That's something that you've actually brought up because the timing of this is really suspect. Why now? This is something, the Stormy Daniels stuff, the hush money payment, that's been going on for a really long time. So why now would they be going after him? And one thing that you had suggested was that potentially this was the deep state orchestrating this indictment to wipe out other events in the news. Do you still think that? What news do you think they were trying to cover up?
Well, it's extraordinary to me the murder of 6 people in a Christian church by a trans radical is out of the news. The payments to the Biden family from China out of the news. I think this is a willful effort to change the subject. Meanwhile, we inch closer and closer to World War III in Ukraine. All of this, of course, gets subsumed by the Trump endorsement, the Trump indictment. But let's be very clear: Mr. Bragg is merely a minor appendage of the deep state here, and I think that you have a series of dominoes that are designed to try to destroy Donald Trump's prospects of being elected. The sad truth is, however, with each set of politically motivated charges, he only grows stronger.
Just real quick, I want to go back to the prosecutor and the judge. You mentioned that Trump's team might move to change the prosecutor, change the judge, change the venue, all of those things. But why? What are the accusations against this prosecutor or the judge that they are working on behalf of the left or the deep state or Soros, or what are the accusations exactly,
Well,
or the
obviously,
connections?
the fact that Mr. Bragg called for Trump's prosecution before he even held this office or had seen any evidence against him is evidence of bias. The funding from George Soros through a PAC is evidence of bias. Soros is a virulent Trump critic. The judge has made what I think are uh, damning comments that would expose his bias, also his conduct in the other Trump business related prosecution, sending a 75-year-old bookkeeper to jail because he failed to report that he temporarily used an apartment and a car. Please, this is an absurdity. So I'm not an attorney. I can't speak for Trump's attorneys, but I think that you will see a motion for dismissal based on the fact that the statute of limitations ran out long ago. And no, it doesn't get stopped by COVID. I don't know where that legal theory came from. Five former federal prosecutors examined these exact same set of facts and elected not to bring any charges against Donald Trump. I think that tells you a great deal. So I expect, just based on what I have read, to see a motion to dismiss, a motion to recuse the prosecutor, a motion to recuse the judge. If those things fail, certainly a motion for a change of venue out of liberal Manhattan. Why don't we have this trial in Staten Island and pull a jury from there? There's wishful thinking for you. So, look, a lot of this remains to be seen. We're all in the dark reacting to leaks in the New York Times and to CNN. Until we see the indictment and can actually read it, it's hard to make a judgment beyond that.
So Trump is supposed to be, I guess, surrendering himself tomorrow. That is when we'll learn more. That's apparently when we're supposed to see what the charges are exactly. As far as the process goes, and I know you've been in contact with people around Trump and maybe even Trump himself, but as far as the process goes, there's been some speculation on whether or not he's going to be fingerprinted, whether or not he's going to actually have a mugshot. Some people say that, yes, of course it's going to happen. It happens for everybody. Others say this won't happen. It's a matter of national security. There's no way Secret Service is going to allow that. Do you have any insight? What's going to happen tomorrow? What we can expect?
I really don't. Yes, I do occasionally talk to the former president, but I understand those conversations are confidential. But I would say that I can't imagine why he would not be fingerprinted and have a mugshot taken. The only speculation I've seen is whether or not handcuffs are required. I frankly think that if there's the release of a photo of him in handcuffs, he'll raise another $7 million in the next 24 hours because it'll stand as a symbol, as it did with Mandela, as it did with Dr. Martin Luther King, as it did with Frank Sinatra in his famous mugshot. I think it will stand as a symbol of the political nature of this whole thing. I can't answer your question because I don't know exactly what the procedure will be.
Well, a question you can answer. What do you think the chances are now that Ron DeSantis actually throws his hat into the ring?
It would be an egregious mistake on his part. We see his support. It's not just that Trump's support is skyrocketing, but Governor DeSantis's support is taking a nosedive in the polls. His own fundraising establishment base, I think they're getting increasingly nervous. The more people look at the actual record of Ron DeSantis, whether it is COVID-19 or whether it's the fact that he did a multi-million-dollar book deal with HarperCollins, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch. But HarperCollins is the very same publisher of the very pornographic children's books that Governor DeSantis seeks to block from the public schools. It really makes him look like a hypocrite. I hope he will reconsider, but if he does not reconsider, if he insists on running, I honestly think President Donald Trump will beat him like a drum.
So, yeah, it's probably not the best time anymore for him to jump in. I agree. I don't think if he wants a shot at the presidency in the future, now would be not the time to go up against Trump with all of this going on. He's just going to look like an establishment tool. That's what he's going to look like.
Well,
going
the
up against
important thing
Trump.
to understand is that the DeSantis base is a subset of the Trump base. Yes, the
Right.
people who love Trump like DeSantis, but Trump's base is wider, deeper, and far more intense. And at the end of the day, even if Governor DeSantis could figure out some way to get by Donald Trump, he has now earned the enmity of Trump voters who are not Republicans, but who he would need in a general election, but now cannot possibly win. So I think there's been a miscalculation. When we first heard that these charges might come down, his position was, "Oh, I'm not going anywhere near that. No, I'm not going to get involved." Then, after Trump's lawyers already announced that he would voluntarily turn himself in, now Ron DeSantis says, "Oh, I won't assist in the extradition of Trump to New York." But there is no extradition. That was an empty gesture. That was a grandstand play to try to cover up his botching of the first question, and then to have his allies in the state senate announce the introduction of the legislation to remove the state's current prohibition of serving as governor while running for federal office on the very day Trump was indicted. That's just bad political timing, any way you look at it.
Roger, thank you so much for being here. Great to get your insight.
I appreciate it. And by the way, folks can follow the Stone Zone on Rumble. Go to my Stone Zone feed there. Very best place to see my daily show, stonezone.live, every day at 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Central. God bless you, Kim.
Look forward to watching. Thank you, Roger. Well, it's tax season, guys. We're here in April, and if you owe back taxes, you might be really stressing out. Maybe you have unfiled returns and you're really stressing out, but there is nothing to be embarrassed about or even to stress about because this can be handled. This can happen to anybody for sure. I mean, we've got a lot of people in the gig economy now, a lot of people who are 1099s. And because of that, maybe you've just gotten behind on taxes and now they've piled up. And we also have the Biden administration hiring all of those IRS workers that they claim are going to be going after the rich. But we know they're really going after you and me. They're going after the gig economy, the people who are 1099s. Well, don't deal with the IRS on your own. Tax Network USA is a nationwide tax resolution firm who can protect your rights and settle your back taxes. And in some cases, they can even zero out your balance so that you don't owe anything. They are experts in all IRS programs. They understand tax law, so you don't have to. And over the last 14 years, get this, Tax Network USA has saved over $1 billion in back taxes for their clients. They even file yearly returns for you, so they can protect you from audits. Now, whether you owe a few $1,000s or maybe you owe a few million, they can help you. Even if you haven't filed in years, they can help you. If you have a payment arrangement already with the IRS, they can still help you sort that out and maybe even eliminate the rest of what you owe. Just visit taxnetworkusa.com/Kim to find out more.